Welcome to Cloud Realities Live, an original podcast from Capgemini, and this week in partnership with Google at Google Cloud Next 2025. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee van der Giezen.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And I am delighted to say that today, at the beginning of our exploration of industries, we are joined by Meg Tucker, who's Director of Insurance at Google Cloud. Hey, Meg.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. How's your diary this week?
Oh my gosh. Wide open. No, just kidding.
This is the only thing you had on. This was it,
Thank you for booking me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be able to be here today to relax a little. I mean, the majority of the day yesterday was probably 20 to 30,000 steps and many customer interactions. We're getting to see and speak to so many different people about what they're doing and what they're building and how they're changing the world. And when you get here and you get in a room with 30,000 people, you really do start to feel the magic and get sucked into the energy. And it's hard not to just let your curiosities run wild. So
that's right. I like these things for like a number of different reasons, but one of the things I get a lot of value out of is like the temperature check. So where's everything up to, and what's the leading edge conversation that's going on? And you get a really good sense of that, not only from the announcements and the sessions, of course, but just walking around the marketplace floor and just seeing like how organizations are presenting themselves, like what their lingo is, how many buzzwords they've managed to squash onto into a buzzy phrase, that kind of thing. I just think it's very educational from that point of view.
There's so much going on the expo floor. We've got generative AI kicking and shooting for basketball and soccer. There's puppies somewhere around here running around. You can get a massage.
Rob went 3 or 4 times yesterday, didn't you, Rob?
Sounds like you had a busy day too. I need his schedule instead. Rob's doing it right.
Yeah, exactly. He knows what he's doing. He's like,
a lot of swag too, don't you?
He's like, guys. I've got a client meeting. It's like, oh yeah, all right, Rob.
he's really over there shooting hoops.
Someone's the client.
You're exploring the new agentic experience.
That's right. I am.
In the simulators.
That's what it is. You're very kind. You're very kind, Meg. What are the headlines, Rob?
A good headline, I think, which was announced was the new conversational AI agents that are being released. And they do 2 things. They do lots of things. There's lots of prompting, help you understand data and all that good stuff. But there's 2 things they've made better, which is human-like voices have been improved. So you don't know if you're talking to a computer or a human.
Can you do an impression of one of the voices that they've developed?
I'm not going to do that here today.
Go on, do it.
No. You're not doing it now with his accent.
Well, no.
You were tempted.
That was almost.
He nearly went.
Dave, he's a wily one. But the second thing is they can now appreciate human emotion, which means they're starting to get that empathy. And this is where AI becomes more human-like. And I thought that was quite exciting because it could potentially change its behavior off the back of how you are speaking to it. And then that might give you a better experience and you become more accustomed to speaking to AI agents.
So when we were chatting about that over breakfast this morning, one of the things that really occurred to me is we've talked on the show a little bit about this, like a notion of your organization becoming alive. So you create an agent that like represents the tone of voice of your organization, the sort of culture of your organization. Obviously it knows a lot about it because of all the data in your organization. So you can then interact with your organization and your organization becomes kind of an intelligent being in its own right. So that to me is the first thing that occurred to me is like alive organizations.
Well, if you think generative AI gave us a human interface into the computer, now we're making that more multimodal. So you can have text, you can have voice. You can I've caught myself having conversations with AI and things like that, and it's like that's very different, isn't it?
I'm just going to leave that sitting there.
Haven't got any friends.
Like, come on.
The joke writes itself.
I'm going to save you because I literally have a document that says conversations with Gemini for Meg. I treat our models like my assistant day in and day out. So I don't actually think it's that unrealistic.
Sometimes the conversation with the AI agent is more compelling than that you have with some humans. So I find solace in a better conversation.
To be honest, Rob, you have been explaining empathy several times to one of our team members.
I
in
did,
the last days.
yeah.
I'm not going to mention any names, but you are.
Well,
You're
I
going to
am,
drop
right?
it?
So we had Wallet.
As
we
he
had,
stares him down.
yeah, we had Walletgate, and Marcel's had a bit of admin trouble, and Dave keeps telling them stories with no relation, shows absolutely no empathy, and then just sort of walks off. It's like they're left there traumatized off the back of the interaction. So
Hey, you're welcome.
You could have it. You guys could have an HR agent that
Oh,
could take you
we'll need
through
one.
empathy
Yeah.
training.
Dave's like a walking HR issue.
I mean, this
And you
is
might
brutal.
be too with that comment.
Hey, Meg, I'm glad you came.
Got you.
Okay, thank you very much. And the other thing that occurred to me was Copperfield's Alien.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're talking about technology being able to give you emotions, that small alien that David Copperfield has in his show, kicking his legs, blinking eyes, having that motion and it's small and he could pick it up and it was still I think and we were like, oh, that's so cute.
I think-
sobbed horribly in Wall-E. So when
Well,
you start to think about cute little
Yeah, like
robots.
inanimate objects that actually become characterful.
Yeah.
And like now with the that thing that you were talking about, Rob.
That thing it was lit about 2 minutes ago. Is your memory that bad this morning? You can't remember 2 minutes
That's the first
ago.
thing, isn't
Oh,
it?
yeah, that's good.
But yeah, like when you put that into inanimate objects now, they are becoming extremely like what's the there's a word for this that I can't bring to mind. It's where you imbue human traits on, say, animals or whatever it might be.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember the word.
We'll work it out.
Somebody put it in the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very much like that, I think, like with machinery. And that's before you get to NVIDIA have been talking about physical AI, which is effectively putting, ChatGPT into robots or Gemini into robots. And, you very quickly get to Star Wars then, don't you?
Yes.
But you know what, though? Still no flying cars, is there?
No flying cars, and I still don't have a robot butler. I know I keep going on about this,
Yeah.
but there is a little bit of lost magic in that, though. If you remember the sci-fi shows from the 60s, the sort of the robot voices, that type of thing.
Do
and
one.
then they got, no, I'm not. You're not
You're going
catching
to
me out on that
get
one.
Yeah.
something before it's over.
I'm not going to say
He's gonna
Danger Will
bite.
Robinson in a robotic voice. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. You're not going to catch me out today.
All right, then, look, on with the show. Meg, thanks again for joining us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your day job? What do you do at Google Cloud?
Yes, gosh. So I currently lead our insurance business for North America and our global strategics team. And what that means is I get to work with the Fortune 1000 insurers of North America. There's about 70 of them. And my job is to do everything we can to make AI helpful in their organizations going forward, partner and build and innovate.
Well, we'll maybe come back to that. Well, we will come back to that in a second. But I understand you're relatively new to the Google world. What did you do before?
So I've actually been at Google for 6 years. I am new into the insurance vertical
Right,
as
right.
of this year. I came over from Oracle. I followed Thomas here, had an opportunity to work with him there for almost a decade, building out the customer experience suite, which, coming full circle is definitely a background now that I'm finding very useful.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
Learning a consumption business and coming over to Google and really getting into the infrastructure side was a great opportunity. We built out our enterprise SoCal business back in 2019. And then I got the opportunity to be on one of the first global industry teams where we decided to go very deep and start to look at, how do we strategize from an industry perspective? And then we bring the broader relevance of Alphabet to that particular vertical. And so I
Nice.
started doing that
Right.
in games. Had an opportunity to partner with that team for 3 years.
Oh, cool.
And now we're really excited. We're certainly doubling down on financial services. I think when you think about the keynote at the beginning that we had yesterday, you heard a lot about some of our customers in the financial services space, and insurance is a core pillar of that,
Right,
as you can
right.
imagine. So it's a really exciting time. We're doing a lot of building. I think that this industry in particular is certainly ripe for disruption in a good way. And I think that change is coming very rapidly. And a lot of what we're seeing and doing with our customers right now is trying to help them understand this world that we're now living in, that of rapid change in technology, and how we can apply that to the business.
And what was it before we dive into insurance a bit? What were you doing in the world of gaming? Rob is a voracious gamer.
I'm a mature gamer, I think they call it now, but I am still remember the 8-bit classics right through to the
Yeah.
I mean, we were and are helping some of the world's largest games launch at planet scale. I mean, you think about the major games. I won't name drop any of them right now that run on GCP, but most of them.
Right.
And we're serving game servers and billions of users follow the sun 24/7. You can imagine from a launch and a live interactive game what that would feel like, but.
It's and that community does not tolerate things that go down and things that don't work, right? If you've ever seen a community that gets angry fast because they can't log in and play their game, that's that community.
Yeah.
And it's good. And over the last few years, it's things have got a lot more stable, a lot more smooth. The way they're launching, they're ironing out the process. And I think a lot of it is on the planetary scale type capabilities that cloud brings. And you guys have, because you run the world's biggest systems, right? So you know how to host the games. Yeah, but no holes barred when something doesn't work in that community.
Server lost connection.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Did you order your Switch 2?
No, I haven't been invited yet. A bit upset by that. I've got all the prerequisites. I still can't get the email from Nintendo. So if you're listening, anybody from Nintendo, send me. I'd like to buy a Switch 2, please.
Yeah.
It's a good plug. Let's see if that happens.
Yeah, let's see if that
if we can
happens.
make some calls for you.
Yeah. Well, so back to insurance then, and let's kick off with the comment you made there about it's a sector that's going to take some positive disruption. It feels like it. It's an incredibly digital set of services. It's it's highly computational. There's a fair amount of kind of agent-like interaction at the front end on call centers and things like that. Just from your first impressions of the industry, maybe like how far behind do you think what's possible the industry is, just on aggregate, from your first feeling of it?
Look, I think with insurance in particular, it's a regulated industry. And so by definition, there's a lot of risk assessment that has to happen. I mean, we're talking to companies that are over 100 years old,
Right.
who have just an exhaustive amount of data that sits in disparate systems, legacy systems where the people who wrote them or anyone that would have even remotely understood what would be on them is gone.
Mm-hmm.
You have disparate systems, wildly complex processes and claims and underwriting and actuarial work that is required. It's a very laborious set of day-to-day skills that you have to kind of conquer. And so I think anytime that there's that much manual work that goes into, a daily industry, whether that's, someone in underwriting or someone in claims or someone in the call center or, you name it, there's just so much automation that I think can happen.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really trying to figure out where you want to navigate that. I think more than anything, the insurance industry is feeling the pressure on, changing generations and how,
how they
up and coming,
consume.
how they want to consume, how they want to interact. But also, we've seen some really tragic, scary things happen in the world here recently. And I think understanding how to insure cyber, understanding, the impact that we're seeing with the fires in California, in my home state, it's tragic. And when you start to talk about trying to figure out empathy, when you talk about a call, first notice of loss, you're talking about a car wreck.
Right.
Someone could have been injured or hurt or killed.
Yeah.
You're talking about your home being invaded, something burning down, your belongings that you've had for your entire life being gone. And so
devastating.
You're having to really address a customer who likely, if they're interacting with you, hopefully it's proactive, right? There's this whole engagement around how do we really target the right customer and, provide the right insights across all these different touch points to ensure that you're coming to them, with an educated point of view about the types of services that they might be interested in. But when you're having to be in a reactive mode and you're experiencing some sort of traumatic loss, you need to be met with the right level of empathy. And you want to ensure when your customers are being met in those moments that you're doing right by them. There's also a high level of responsibility around loss and claims and fraud that, the customers are having to think through and experience, making sure that they're assessing risk appropriately. I mean, these all come into making sure that these companies can stay alive and thrive and innovate. And so I think the disruption is going to come from all of those areas and those forcing pressures.
And when you're in conversations with the leaders in the industry, as you've been going around and having initial conversations, where are they up to in their thinking? Are they kind of reaching out to you to explore some of this stuff, but kind of haven't got there themselves yet? They're sort of trying to understand the art of the possible, or is it more of a they get it? It might be regulation that's getting in the way, or it might be investment that's getting in the way.
You know, I have to say, everyone likes to talk about how slow insurance is, but I think it's being felt very widely across the organization or across the industry in general. I think that the board and the C-suite, we're certainly seeing them come to us and say, can you help us understand what AI readiness means? Can you help us understand how we have to think about scaling this across the board? I think everybody gets really excited about agents, but how do you really manage that? What does that mean? How do you have the right level of security and access? So I think where we're talking to the executive teams right now, what we're coming in and saying is, it's less about the tech and really more about trying to figure out what are the business outcomes that they're trying to drive and what experiences do they want to innovate or change. I think that the C-suite of our largest insurance companies are absolutely thinking about innovation and bleeding edge because they have to be now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for us, it's really trying to target these core business processes that, you know, are critical, and trying to help them figure out what it is that we can do to drive innovation. Are we looking at, you know, trying to drive profitability? Are we helping them, you know, improve their loss ratios?
Right.
You know, are we working with them in terms of, you know, profitability and efficiencies across the claims cycle? You know, and I think from an agentic perspective, there's hundreds and hundreds of areas that you can look at, you know, scaling. You know, when you think about scanning documents and making them like accessible, you know, to different parts of the organization, you know, we're seeing 2x, 3x productivity in underwriting processes right now as we start to apply AI and agentic. And so I think, you know, that disruption's top of mind for them. I think it's really about where do we start? How do we execute? And then how can we ensure that we can future-proof the business and plan for the long term with that? And I think Google's very uniquely positioned to address that from a platform perspective at all levels. And I think most of the discussions we're having is just how can we help them in those areas?
Right. And are they? So I think there's a nice picture emerging from what you're saying there, which is, you know, kind of using AI at the front end and call centers and agentizing the interface. And, you know, from, you know, Rob's headline this morning, the increased empathy of agents is going to be interesting in that space, I think. And then you've got, the back end, which is like dealing with documents, dealing with kind of the management of data, etc. What are they doing with, have you seen much change in terms of their organizational shapes?
Oh my gosh. I mean, absolutely. I think when I think about the organizational shift, I think that there's just a massive change in the way that we're interacting with information and how that's driving the business outcome. So I think about that with Google first. So we were just chatting offline before we got going. But, you know, when I think about when I started my role back in December, coming into insurance, and what it looks like now with how I can interact with the models, and we're, you know, 4 months from where we were then, it's an insane shift in productivity in the way that I can engage and interact and plan with my team and how we're working. And so using Notebook LLM, having access to the models, Gemini, you know, 2.5 Flash, the deep research opportunities, you know, have really allowed us to kind of develop our go-to-market strategy. And Google had to totally rethink the way that we engage, whether, you know, how quickly are we pushing products to market? We had to, you know, folks were thinking we were playing catch up, but really we were just setting ourselves up to become a rocket ship and then really propel.
Describe that process a little bit for us. Like, how did you get into that, and what sort of decisions did you take to sort of intentionally create the sort of the perception, or let me rephrase it. How did you help the market get to the correct perception of what you wanted them to feel in terms of your product releases?
I mean, look, I think we're all still doing that. I think it's we're at the very beginning of, what is going to be, we'll look back and say probably the largest technology shift that we're likely going to see in our lifetime.
Quite likely.
And I think when we think about how we get our arms around that, I think first things first, we have to just make sure we understand in and of ourselves how it changes our day-to-day interactions at work, and then how we're engaging with our customers. I think for me, when we go in and talk to customers, it's just showing them, like, we can come in and give a presentation and talk about why we're great and how we think our platform differentiates. But what I think is nice is right now we're coming in and we're showing our customers, we've got an underwriting agent. What does that look like for you? And what could that mean? Let me just show that to you live. Here, let me pull it up. Or let me show you how I did research, for Mr. CXO. Let me give you a one-page, debrief on the last 6 earning calls that you've had. And let me give you a point of view on what we seem to think might drive profitability in an area that we could be focusing on, and come in with a pre-thought list of areas that we think could likely be a good starting point, and then have a whole framework around, the way that we would develop that, deliver that, and have probably engaged with the model and put that together in under an hour.
Yeah.
Where normally I would have had to have worked on that for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying with claims, right? We're starting to see claims processing get down to hours and days as opposed to weeks and months.
Right.
You think about the going back to the fires, right? And how quickly can you get these folks back on their feet and paid?
And it's for a company that's been going like for 100 years. AI, you have to think very differently, right? What can you do? How do I use the agents? It's like you bring up Notebook LLM. That's a hidden gem that I'm surprised you don't push it more as a tool that people can use, but you can stick all your corpus of information and ask it questions. That's a totally different way of just personally behaving around information, right? So if you take a whole very complicated, very nuanced process type insurance focus, then there's a whole rethink that has to go right across it. Now, building that into the corporate structure to allow people to understand they can do things differently must be quite hard as well. It's like a learning thing that has to go on, and it's such an ingrained complexity.
I think there's a little not talked about that often personal shift going on in there somewhere as well. And from my personal experience, it's getting past the feeling that you've cheated.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So like it almost feels like, am I doing my job enough? Because I've just asked Gemini something and it's given me an entirely succinct version of back that frankly I could probably present tomorrow. It's like, is that me presenting my work?
Oh, I so related it. I was in a course and we had to write a poet with a personal word. And it was like summer last year. And I did it like, secretly on ChatGPT. And I thought, do this. And then a great poem came out.
You mean Gemini?
You did it on the
Gemini.
Sorry, yes, of course. I used it on my phone and I was actually a bit ashamed.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I told people, it's like, oh, it's not completely me. And, I've had a little help. And they were like, that's genius. Why didn't it? And then I actually felt okay sharing it.
To claim it.
Yeah.
Can I be honest? I got past that guilt very quickly.
Oh.
I just went, here's a thing that's going to help me out. I'm using it.
You've been lifting stuff for your entire career though, Rob. It's just a more efficient way, isn't it?
It's just refined my whole approach.
Yeah. Do you find that at all, Meg?
I mean, look, yeah, of course. And coming from the media and entertainment industry and coming into insurance, I think, look, we are with Agent Space and Notebook in particular, and I wouldn't say we aren't pushing it. I think we're trying to get it in. It's for less than you pay for a monthly Netflix subscription, you can make individual employees infinitely more productive. You're giving them access to find, understand, and act on data. I don't necessarily think it's cheating. It's work smarter, not harder, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's just time. Like, you could still go scour the web and go find the 30 different documents that the model's going to then go cite and help you understand, like, its reasoning, its thinking, how it's arriving at the outline it's putting together, and then give you the 15 to 30 resources that it leveraged. So I could go do that manually, right? I can go access documents across, we were talking about title insurance the other day, and, you have to go 40 years back on a property. I didn't realize that.
Right,
Like, think
right.
about the amount of data that comes along with a deed, or is it a trust, or is this an LLC, or how many owners are there, and who has access to this? Is there anybody else that would have access to that? And then you think about there's, I think, 112 million homes in the United States, and that's all regulated at a county level.
Right, right.
County.
Yeah.
You know, and in some
Yeah,
scenarios, city, right? And so you start to think about the amount of data that a title insurance company has and how you have to parse that.
And it's all
I don't
different
think
as well, isn't it? Because it was originally paper-based, things like, and
It
you
still
brought that in
is
as being
to a certain-
digitized,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
like, it's all different. So trying to find a regular structure to it is really
I mean,
complicated.
Google is the best partner from a data perspective to look at structured and unstructured data. But just going back to creativity and cheating, I think we were at the Sphere the other night and we got a chance to
Oh, you see the
preview
Wizard of Oz thing?
the remake of Wizard of Oz. And I remember sitting there and watching the story and them talking about how they literally recreated frame by frame by frame, with you having to amplify Dorothy or bring the uncle into the shot because he's too far out of the frame, and how would he walk and what way would that look, you know, and that the model can do that. But you see through the whole entire process that it actually empowered the creatives to be able to do a whole new level of work. Like, who would have thought that we would be able to bring one of the best movies of the world, talk about magic.
Yeah,
you think
that
about the
really
Wizard
is.
of Oz and what that invokes in, you know, me as I think about my childhood and Dorothy and Toto, and to be able to relive that and bring that to life on one of the largest screens in the world
Right.
took an immense amount of work. And yes, there was a ton of technology that went into that, but the filmmakers were in tears talking about the process that they had to be able to bring this back to life. And that was very human led,
I
right?
have to have gone
Wow.
to that preview. I must have mislaid my invitation.
is it still in the post?
Oh, it
David?
must be. It must be. Yeah.
Still in the post.
But yeah, it
It's
sounded
so
amazing.
cool.
It sounded
is.
amazing.
It looks fabulous.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna have opening night in August
Yeah.
Right.
here. and
28th,
I
yeah.
Oh, and
cannot wait. It's gonna just be incredible.
Brilliant. Well, look, maybe let's bring the conversation to a little bit of a conclusion. Just returning to insurance briefly, and casting out over the course of the next, pick your time frame: 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. What does it look like for you, and what are the big transformations that you're expecting to see, perhaps?
Look, I hope that in 6 months' time, there is an opportunity for us to have penetrated a large majority of the market with helping them understand how we can bring all of this together under one control plane and start to amplify agents across claims and processing and underwriting and research and marketing. We didn't even talk about it, but there's billions and billions of dollars a year spent in advertising in the insurance industry. And
Right.
imagine if you could create a 50-second ad spot for $6 in 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Crazy.
Like, so, you know, I think in 6 months, I hope to be, standing beside customers who have already been able to deploy and deliver agents across their business that are impacting having faster, fairer, more efficient claims processing, faster, more accurate risk assessment and pricing. I hope that we're able to drive, better customer experiences in some of the most difficult times that people have to interact with an organization. And I'm absolutely certain that we'll be probably shocked at where we're at 6 months from now, because I look back 6 months ago and we were maybe not even at all looking at even some of the tech that right now we
Agentic
have on
was
stage.
super early 6 months ago even. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
crazy.
Yeah.
Well, look, Meg, thank you very much for joining us today, taking some time out of your busy schedule to share some insights.
It was fun to come and hang out with you guys.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Anytime you want someone to come and just talk about random topics also.
Just
I'm your girl.
random.
We'll put you on speed dial.
That's the new
Appreciate it.
podcast.
Yeah.
We'll just call it Random.
But before we let you
You're
go,
onto something.
we've been exploring the notion of magic over the course of the week, and we were inspired both by seeing David Copperfield the other night, but also by Arthur C. Clarke's third law, which is any technology that's sufficiently powerful is indistinguishable from magic. And it seems at the moment that a lot of the technologies we've been talking about really are getting to that point. I mean, emotive agents we've just been talking about. I mean, go and show that to even the version of you from 5 years ago, and you'd blow your mind. So, but what we're interested in is like how people are inspired by this. So, who was your favorite magician when you were growing up?
You were asking me that, and we did a reframe on magic, because when I think about magic, I think it's just inspiring curiosity, or invoking the inner child in us who, can see things outside of a black and white world. And for me, that was sports.
Right.
I grew up playing tennis. Loved live sports, baseball, soccer, football, you name it. And my father brought me into that world. But for me, the idea of imagination and the world is your oyster and you could be anything you could possibly dream of.
Right.
I wanted to be Mary Pierce for tennis. That was my favorite player growing up. But just the magic of live interactions in games and bringing people together who have, something to cheer on and takes you out of your daily life.
Right,
And, you don't think of that as a kid, but it certainly is that for me now.
No,
but
it lives in
I
you.
still think that today, like those experiences are magical for me. I know that's not like a wizard I
think
did
it's
love
a good-
She-Ra when I
That's
was
an
little
excellent
too, by the way.
interpretation
I
of
was
what your
her for
favorite
Halloween
was,
about 5 years in a row. So I don't know if she's a musician, or a magician, but she's Princess of Power.
Yes. I mean, I
Which I'm not
would
mad
say
at.
she's maybe even better than a magician.
Yeah.
Her
outfit was
But yeah,
really dope.
It's absolutely
So
on point.
that's what I was here for.
Absolutely on point.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is fun.
No, thank you, Meg.
If you would like to discuss any of the issues on this week's show and how they might impact you and your business, please get in touch with us at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to connect and DM if you have questions for the show to tackle. And of course, please rate and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us improve the show. A huge thanks to Meg, our sound and editing wizards Ben and Louie, our producer Marcel, and of course to all our listeners. See you in Google's Reality next.